The last time God lost faith in man, he sent a flood. This time he sent what you see outside.
Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, where I cover all kinds of supernatural creatures. Today we're going to look at what I consider a classic, Legion from 2010. This film has a great cast: Paul Bettany, Lucas Black, who I know from Fast and Furious, Kevin Durand, Dennis Quaid, Tyrese Gibson, who I also know from Fast and Furious, Charles Dutton, Kate Walsh, and more. It's an amazing lineup and it shows throughout the movie. I'm a sucker for something with angels and demons, and this film has always reminded me of Constantine in some ways. A band of survivors trapped in a diner must fight off a legion of people that are possessed. Let's not waste any more time and get into Legion, why humanity has been forsaken, what these creatures really are, the sacred tattoos, and more. I've been wanting to talk about this movie for a long time, so I hope you enjoy. Real quick before we get started, thanks a lot to Aura for returning to sponsor another video. I only work with brands if I like the product, and I think Aura is extremely useful. It's already helped me out a lot. Data brokers sell your information to anyone who may want to target you. Scammers, spammers, and who knows who else. This results in all those annoying spam emails and phone calls. They can get your full name, email, home address, even health records, your relatives. It's all out there for strangers to find. That's why I've started using this video's sponsor, Aura. They show me the data brokers that are selling my information and automatically submit opt-out requests. When you submit an opt-out, they legally have to oblige. Aura has already got my information off a dozen databases and is working on 14 more. I've seen people that had their info removed from over 100 brokers. This is my favorite tool. It cuts down on spam and protects me from hackers who could use this information to access my other accounts. Aura also constantly monitors data leaks and will notify you if any of your information was in there, so you can change your password if necessary before it's too late. I've already had to do this once. Aura provides all the protection you need with built-in antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls to limit screen time, identity theft insurance, and more, all without having several different apps. I found it very easy to set up, and best of all, you get everything for one affordable price. You might already have some of these tools, but Aura is the complete package for protecting my data. Go to aura.com/Cogan Lollins to start your 2-week free trial. Link will also be in the description below. Thanks so much to Aura for sponsoring the video. The movie begins with someone seemingly falling from the sky. It's December 23rd, 1:02 a.m. in Los Angeles. This mysterious person has blood on him, and he is startled by a barking dog, causing him to pull out a knife. He kneels down in the alleyway, and now all we see is his shadow on the wall. He removes his jacket, revealing what looks like angel wings. That's when he raises his knife and cuts them off. He shouts in pain, and there's now a halo above his head. It shrinks down until it disappears and some kind of band falls from his neck. Next, he makes his way into a building, takes out the employee, and begins stitching his back where he cut off his wings. This is the first time we get to see these strange tattoos all over his body. He must know this building, because he walks to a storage container, breaks the lock, and it's filled with guns. He takes as many as he needs and proceeds to leave the building. Just as 2 cops are driving by, the wall explodes and the man walks out. We can see the hole in the wall is in the shape of a cross. The cop tells him to put his hands up and drop the bags. Just then, we hear chaos over the cop's radio and someone saying, "Man down, man down." The guy holding the bags full of guns calmly says, "It's already begun. There isn't much time." Clearly he knows a lot more than we do. The cops continue to tell him to drop the bags, so he does. When one of the cops approaches, he quickly takes the cop's gun and holds him hostage. The other cop says let him go, but then he starts to shake like he's having a seizure. When he finally stops shaking, his eyes are now black and his teeth are sharp. The cop now speaks in a different voice as well, and it sounds like he's possessed. He says, "What are you doing, Michael? These weren't your orders." Okay, so we know this guy's name is Michael. Michael says, "I'm following my own orders now." And the cop replies, "Then you will die with the child." We don't know who this child is that he's talking about, but at least we know this guy's name is Michael. And because he had angel wings, we can kind of put the pieces together. He is the one and only Archangel Michael, one of the most powerful and leaders of the angels. Some say that his power is only rivaled by God himself, or possibly his brother, Lucifer, who he defeated and cast out of heaven. This whole time, the cop that's being held hostage is freaking out, because his partner looks like a demon and is now talking a bunch of nonsense. The cop with sharp teeth suddenly shoots his partner in the head. He tries to kill Michael, but he's clearly much better trained because Michael takes out the possessed cop with ease. Michael proceeds to grab his bags of guns, steal the police car, and drive away. As he drives down the road, the power is starting to turn off in the city. He said it's already begun. But what was he talking about? We now cut to a small diner in the middle of nowhere called Paradise Falls. The owner of the diner is named Bob Hansen, and he lives there with his son Jeep and Jeep's girlfriend Charlie, who is currently pregnant. Although she is pregnant, the baby is not Jeep's. It's not clear if she cheated on him or they broke up for a while, but either way, he plans to look after the child no matter what. But Charlie's conflicted about the situation. We also get to hear from Bob, who thinks his son is following Charlie around like a puppy dog while she sleeps with other guys. Jeep snaps at his father and says she's not like that. He then goes on to explain that he's been having nightmares about her all the time. So bad he wishes he didn't have to sleep again. He can't explain why, but being with her, looking after the child, it's something he has to do. I wonder if this child is the child. I guess we'll find out. Bob says he felt the same thing with the diner. It was something he had to do. He thought it would become a big gold mine when the big superstore got built. But they decided to build it elsewhere, and now he's stuck here. He tells Jeep, don't make the same mistake I did. If you don't leave now, you'll end up like everyone that stops here. Lost. Now we get to see the inside of the diner. Meet the cook Percy, as well as a family traveling across the country. A mother, father, and daughter. Their car broke down and Jeep is currently trying to fix it. The next person arrives shortly after. This is Kyle, and he's trying to go see his son. He's clearly very lost, so he pulls into the diner to ask for directions. Charlie is outside having a cigarette, and Kyle says, you shouldn't be smoking with the baby. She half-heartedly agrees and tells him there's a working phone inside. Jeep walks by, and Kyle says, who's that? Charlie just doesn't say anything. She's clearly very conflicted about the child and Jeep. I mean, she doesn't even want to admit that's her boyfriend. Jeep is outside working on the family's vehicle, and he sees something strange in the sky. It almost looks like a dust storm, and we can hear thunder as well. Inside the diner, the TV has stopped working. Not a big deal. Usually Bob gives it a few smacks, and there we go. Wait a minute. It says this is not a test with an emergency sound playing. I like how the first thing Bob says is it's one of those test things, when the only thing we know is that it's not a test. He tells Percy to turn on the radio to see what's going on, but it's also blank, playing the same tone. The mother Sandra says, wouldn't they be telling us what to do if there was a real emergency? And yeah, that would be helpful. But what if they don't know what to do? Kyle finally asks if he can use the phone and slips Bob some money. He agrees and tells Kyle it's in the back. He tries to call his son, but gets into an argument with his ex. Then the phone starts to break up before completely cutting out. Everyone in the diner is starting to worry about what's going on. They speculate maybe it was an earthquake, or an attack of some kind. Bob tries to calm everyone down and says he'll call his brother for an update, but that's when Kyle walks out and says that the phone is dead too. So no TV, radio, or phone. Whatever Michael was talking about seems to be spreading. Jeep has bad news for his dad. The problem with the family's car is something to do with the computer, and he has no clue how to fix that. They will have to get a tow truck, but obviously they can't call anyone right now, so they're not going to be happy. That's when a new guest arrives at the diner. This woman's name is Gladys. She makes small talk with the patrons and orders a steak. Rare. The small talk starts off friendly enough, but when Charlie comes over to the table, things go sideways. The old woman starts to ask some questions about her baby, how far along she is, and who's the father. Charlie says she's just about there, and the father's out of the picture. Gladys asks again, what about the baby? It's gonna burn. Charlie is taken aback. Did she hear that right? She says, excuse me? And Gladys repeats, your baby's gonna burn. This catches the attention of all the other people in the diner. Charlie tells her to go to hell, slams the receipt down on the table, and walks away. Gladys is still eating her steak calmly and continues talking to herself.
All those little babies are gonna burn.
Sandra tries to say something, but Gladys cuts her off, calling her the C word and saying all she does is complain, complain. When she says this, her voice has now taken on a completely different sound. Not like the cop at the beginning, but definitely supernatural. Sandra's husband becomes enraged that Gladys snapped at his wife and demands an apology. However, when he gets too close, Gladys lunges forward and bites a huge chunk out of his neck.
I'd like you to apologize to my wife.
Percy grabs a frying pan and drills it at her head, knocking her down. If that was Moaning Myrtle, that would have been 50 points.
10 points if you get it through her stomach. 50 points if it goes through her head.
That hit from the frying pan should have killed her, but she gets back up. She now looks more like the cop from the beginning, sporting sharp teeth. Gladys stands there for a moment, then runs over to the wall and begins climbing up it like the Exorcist. They are trying to shoot her, but they keep missing. She suddenly drops down from the roof with a sinister smile on her face and backhands Bob, sending him flying across the room. So whatever these things are, they have super strength. Or at least some of them do. The shotgun lands at Jeep's feet, so he picks it up and points it at Gladys. She looks right at him and says, "You will never save her." Percy screams at Jeep to shoot. Gladys opens up her mouth and lunges for Jeep. We see her feet sliding across the ground like she's gliding toward him. I don't know why, but that's so much more creepy than walking. It reminds me of the movie Dead Silence. Jeep closes his eyes and we hear 3 shots. Then Gladys drops to the ground. But when the camera zooms out, we realize Jeep didn't shoot. It was Kyle. He had a pistol and pulled it out just in time. Thank God, because Jeep completely froze up. As Kyle holds the gun, we can see his hand shaking, showing us how freaked out he is. Once the old lady is down, they quickly try to help Sandra's husband, who is still bleeding out from the neck. They lift him up, carry him to Kyle's vehicle, and start driving as fast as they can. Bob and Jeep stay behind at the diner. Sandra wants to know how far the hospital is, and Percy says probably 70 or 80 miles. Oh, this guy's doomed. Remember that strange cloud the Jeep seen in the sky earlier? Well, they're about to drive right into it. Sandra's daughter Audrey says, "What is that?" And Percy says it's just a cloud. But Audrey says, "Clouds don't buzz." Just then, a few flies start coming through the vents of the car and hitting the windshield. A moment later, they hit pretty much a wall of bugs, so thick you can't even see. The entire car is filled and they are forced to turn around and go back to the diner. While they're driving back, Jeep is talking to his father back at the diner, and he's angry he couldn't pull the trigger. He was too afraid. His father consoles him about what happened and says something interesting. "I don't know how she was standing after Percy hit her with that frying pan. It broke her neck. I swear I saw it." So whatever these things are, not even a broken neck will stop them. Or they have some kind of healing ability. Shortly after, everyone else arrives back at the diner, and they don't even try to explain what happened. Percy just says, "I need to get my Bible." The massive swarm of flies then goes over the diner, covering it in shadow. But they don't stay around the diner because they're gone the next time they go outside. These massive swarms of flies are a biblical reference. Sometimes people associate flies with the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. More specifically, pestilence and death. There was another case of God himself sending swarms of flies to inhabit Egypt to drive them crazy. Could that be what's happening here? Bob asks them what happened, and Kyle says, "You want me to explain the behavior of a pestilence?" So I guess that pretty much confirms it. Gladys's dead body is still lying on the ground, making them uncomfortable, so they decide to move it. They note that her body temperature is still extremely warm, even though she's been dead for about an hour. Kyle chimes in and says, "I don't care how long she's been dead. Lady was walking on the ceiling. She ain't staying in here. If I was there, I would second that." In fact, I've seen enough supernatural movies, I would say let's just go ahead and burn it to be safe. What they do is wrap her body up in a bag and throw it by the dumpster. Just then, they see a car driving down the road. A police car. At first, they're kind of relieved, but then they see it's a Los Angeles police car, and that puts them on the defense. They're all the way in the Las Vegas desert. Why would an LA cop be out here? Charlie sees the car and comes running out of the diner, glad that help has arrived. But it's not a police officer. It's Michael. Considering what they just went through, Bob doesn't want to take any risks and raises the shotgun.
Is that how you greet all your customers?
I like how calm Michael is the whole time. Like he knows he's not in any real danger. Bob tells him he's lucky they don't shoot him first and greet him later. "Now show me them teeth." Michael shows his teeth, and this puts them at ease. Bob asks his name and apologizes, but they had a lady in here earlier with these crazy teeth. Nearly bit a man in half. Now, if you stop and think about what Bob is doing, it doesn't really make any sense. He tells Michael to show his teeth, but when Gladys first arrived, her teeth were normal, so that's not really a great test. Bob says that Michael doesn't look like any cop he's seen before, not even from LA. But he must be, right? Who would be crazy enough to steal a cop car? Michael gives Bob a confused look and says, "You don't know, do you?" They all reply, "No. The TV, radio, and phones are out." Michael is growing impatient. He says, "I'm running out of time," and starts walking toward the diner, but Bob raises the shotgun again. Michael effortlessly disarms him and rests the barrel of the shotgun right on his forehead. He holds it there for a while, contemplating. Percy comes out of the restaurant and tries to talk Michael down. While still holding the shotgun, he turns around and says, "They're here." Then he quickly lowers the shotgun, tosses it back to Bob and says, "You'll need this." They ask him, "Who's here?" And Michael replies, More like her. Well, that doesn't sound good. They had a hard enough time dealing with just one of these things. Michael walks over to the car and opens the trunk full of guns and starts handing them out to everyone. He hands Jeep a gun, but his dad says, "I'm not sure if that's a good idea." Jeep reassures him he can handle it, and Michael agrees. He can handle it. He doesn't have a choice. The look on Jeep's face when he says that is great. Michael then hands Charlie a pistol and whispers, "Don't do anything brave." They all go inside the diner and spend a while barricading the doors and locking everything up. Right when they get everything locked up, the power finally goes out, just like it did in the city. They go up on the roof to get a better view, and this is one of my favorite scenes in the movie, and I think one of the most memorable for sure. Out in the dark, they hear a strange but familiar song.
You hear what I'm hearing?
Something about that song, playing at night, is just strange and off-putting. Michael tells them to turn the safeties off and hold on tight or you'll blow your hand off. Right when he says this, they all look over at Percy, who is already missing one hand. He quickly notices them and says, "What the hell are you looking at me for?" All the small lines like this being delivered so well is one of the reasons I enjoy the comedy in this movie. It's sprinkled in at just the right times without taking away from the action or ruining the mood. Finally, the ice cream truck approaches the diner and stops. The men are on the roof and the women are hiding in the diner, looking after Sandra's husband, who is somehow still alive. The ice cream man begins to get out of the truck in a strange manner, then stands in front of it.
Oh man, he don't look that bad.
The ice cream man's mouth opens unnaturally wide, just like the old lady from earlier. Then, his limbs start to grow. Longer and longer, until he's almost like a spider and he sprints toward the building. If anything ever runs at me like that, I'm quitting life. The men on the roof start shooting and they manage to put down the ice cream man. You could say they put him on ice. Okay, I'll stop. Well, that wasn't so bad. Wait a minute. What's that coming down the road? Uh-oh. Dozens and dozens of cars start coming down the road toward the diner. Before we go any further, I want to talk about Doug Jones for a second. The guy who played the ice cream man. He is a mime, contortionist, and actor. He is known for playing many different weird and strange creatures through heavy makeup. He has been in so many films I can't name them all. My favorites that he's portrayed would probably be Saru from Star Trek, the Angel of Death from Hellboy 2, and the Pale Man from Pan's Labyrinth. This guy is seriously talented, and even if you've never heard his name, you've probably seen him in a movie. It attests to what I said before about this movie having a way better cast than it really needed, but I'm not complaining. Back to the film. There's now many cars coming toward the diner, and when the camera zooms in, we see the people in the cars beginning to change. Doing that same shaking thing that the cop did at the beginning. It's such a simple effect, but it works so well. I even like the sound they used. It makes it this visceral, almost insect-like transformation. When Michael realizes what's happening, he yells to start shooting the cars. They begin to unload, causing some of them to spin out and explode. Michael turns around and sees even more cars coming from the other direction. He picks up a rocket launcher and takes out a transport truck. Eventually, all the people start exiting their cars and walking toward the diner. Since we've seen them transforming, does that mean that just a few moments ago, all these people were just normal humans, possibly driving to escape from the city? Possibly. As all the people begin to approach the building, Michael starts firing again. Kyle yells, "They're just regular people, man." But Michael says, "Not anymore. Keep firing." They seem kind of unsure, but start shooting alongside Michael. He says keep them away from the windows. Meanwhile, downstairs, one of the creatures comes flying through the window, causing the woman to panic. Well, I guess they didn't do a good job of keeping them away from the windows. The creature grabs Sandra's husband and tries to drag him outside. All the women grab him and start a tug-of-war with the creatures outside. But they can't hang on, and the creatures pull him through the window. Charlie gets a little too close to the window, and one of the creatures grabs her. And when it does, it says, "There you are." Luckily, Michael shows up just in time to save her, and remind her he said not to do anything brave. Michael sprays and prays through the window, and the creatures look like they're retreating. At least for now. When the dust settles, Sandra wants to go out there after her husband, but Michael assures her he's gone. Everyone meets up in the diner, but Michael says somebody needs to be on the roof. That's when Bob storms in and demands that Michael start talking. I know I've been holding out on what these creatures are and what's truly going on, but everything is about to be explained. Michael begins. The last time God lost faith in man, he sent a flood. This time, he sent what you see outside. Percy interjects. So you're saying this is an apocalypse? Michael replies, no, an extermination. Those things outside are just vessels. They're possessed. The weakest willed are the easiest to turn. Well, that explains why the people in the diner haven't been taken over like everyone else. They must be made of sterner stuff. Now, you might be thinking the same as Kyle. These people are possessed by demons. But you would be wrong. They're possessed by angels. Percy almost takes offense to this and says, I don't know what book you've been reading, but in my version, angels are the good guys. Michael has the coldest response ever. The truth is never that simple. Kyle interjects, I'm no pastor, but I've never heard of no ice cream man or old lady eating raw meat jumping on the ceiling with baby teeth, so I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Kyle is definitely one of my favorite characters in this movie. Jeep finally says something and asks a good question. How does Michael know so much about them? And that's when he reveals that until last night, he was on their side. Bob thinks Michael is insane. He doesn't even believe in God. Michael says, that's fine, Bob. He doesn't believe in you either. He doesn't believe in any of this anymore. Percy whispers to himself, I knew this day would come. I just didn't think I'd be around to see it. Bob says, come on, Percy, what are we even talking about this for? Angels and possessed people? It's not real. But Percy isn't having it. He tells Bob, have you looked outside? Those aren't exactly our regular customers. I'm with Percy on this one. Even if you don't believe, how can you explain the ice cream man with spider legs? After seeing that, I'd be pretty much open to anything. They assume that Michael is there to protect them. However, he's not there to protect them all. Just Charlie. She is confused, saying, why me? But it turns out, her baby is humanity's last hope. So I guess Charlie's baby is the child that the police officer was talking about. Michael says either her child lives or mankind dies. That means they need to hold the creatures off until the baby is born. Problem is, she's only 8 months pregnant. How can they hold out in a diner for a month longer? Luckily, Michael informs them they won't need to wait that long. The baby's coming soon. Michael must have some knowledge of the future and know when the baby is going to be born. It's also possible this was well discussed among the angels beforehand, since this baby was of such great importance. Michael doesn't care what they believe, but he needs their help. However, he warns them something much worse is on the way. Kyle and Percy go up on the roof for lookout duty, and they talk about the old lady. Percy wants to know why Kyle had the pistol. Don't reckon it's for hunting buck. Kyle tries to act tough at first, saying he uses it for protection, but Percy doesn't believe him. Eventually, Kyle admits that he's never actually used it. May have flashed it a couple times, but never fired it. Not until today. That explains why his hand was shaking when he shot the gun. Percy realizes Kyle isn't exactly the person he thought he was, and in retrospect, thank God he had that gun. Bob is in the diner cooking some food. The power is off, but the gas is still working somehow. He's talking to Sandra about her husband that was taken by the possessed. In the back room, there's a much more interesting conversation going on between Jeep and Michael. Jeep wants to know what Michael did before he came here. He was a soldier, a general in his army. He left because he was given an order he didn't believe in. He lost faith. I didn't. Obviously, when Michael says he, it's referring to God. Jeep wants to know why Michael still has faith when things seem so hopeless. Michael tells him when God chose mankind as the object of his love, he was the first in all of heaven to bow down before them. My hope in mankind was no less than his. But I have watched you trample that gift. Watched you kill each other over race and greed. Wage war over dust and rubble and words in old books. And yet, in the midst of all this darkness, I see some people who will not be bowed. I see some people who will not give up, even when they know all hope is lost. Some people who realize being lost is so close to being found. He's talking about Jeep, and he knows his whole past. When his mother left, he spent 5 years helping his dad pick up the pieces. He loves a woman who bears the child of another with no thought of himself, even though he knows she may never love him the way he loves her. Jeep and people like him are the reason Michael still has faith. We get to see a flashback of when Michael was still an angel. He's standing in some kind of structure in the clouds and a voice from the shadow says, "You question him?" Michael says, "I question myself, and so should you. Since the creation of mankind, angels were told only to love them. He cannot stop." The other voice says, "They have brought this judgment upon themselves." But Michael thinks they are just lost. They should be guided. Finally, we find out who Michael's talking to when he says, "Gabriel, do you wish to be a son who gives his father what he asks for, or what he needs?" It's clear from this conversation that Michael still has much hope for humanity. whereas Gabriel has completely accepted the idea of extermination. Gabriel says the weak will turn against the strong, and you will undo what has been done. And if you defy him, you will anger him for the last time. War is coming to man, Michael, whether you like it or not. The dogs of heaven have been unleashed. We then see thousands of angels all flying together, and the sound they make is familiar. The fluttering sound of their wings sounds very familiar to the noise when the humans are being possessed by an angel. That had to be on purpose, right? I wonder what Gabriel means when he said, "You will anger him for the last time." I guess it's possible that Michael would be subject to the same treatment as his brother Lucifer, to be cast out of heaven. Back to the present time. Bob is on the roof and was supposed to be on watch, but fell asleep. In the morning, Sandra hears something. Or actually, someone. She makes her way to the window and sees her husband tied up upside down to a cross, St. Peter style. This guy is still alive? He's really getting put through the ringer here. He has these large blisters all over his body and they are pulsating. Gross. Sandra begins taking down the barricade to save him, even though everyone else realizes it's an obvious trap. Sandra elbows Kyle and runs outside toward Howard. Percy runs after her and grabs her just in time, pulling her away as her husband explodes. Percy helps Sandra back to the diner, but when he stands there in the door, they know something is wrong. Percy collapses onto the ground and his back is just melted away to the point where you can see his spine. Howard's blood must have been like acid. Sores, rashes, and blisters are a form of punishment that God has been known to use in the past. Never heard of the acid blood though. They now have to tie Sandra up because she has proved that she is absolutely insane. To add to it, she tells her daughter Audrey that this is all her fault because they were only moving because of her. Ouch. The good news is they finally get a signal on the radio. The voice says this:
"No Homeland Security. No military response. We're on our own here, people. If you can hear my voice, we're getting the first bits of good news since the apocalypse began nearly 48 hours ago. A militia is formed on the outskirts of Los Angeles and begin to engage the infected. I'm getting unconfirmed reports of other militias gathering in Death Valley, Zion, and Red Ridge National Parks in the Mojave Desert. May God give us the strength to survive and have mercy for those who are already lost."
Charlie says that Red Ridge is only about an hour away. Well, that tells us pretty much exactly where the diner is. Some of the people, including Kyle, want to leave and go somewhere safe, but Michael will not risk being on the move when the baby comes. It's too dangerous. Charlie and Jeep sit down and talk about the baby for a minute. Charlie says she's not sure if she even wants the baby sometimes. She even went down to the clinic, but she couldn't go through with it. This scene is a bit weird to me because Charlie comes off as a horrible person and Jeep basically tells her to stop feeling sorry for herself. Like I said, a weird scene. Kyle and Audrey are on watch when suddenly the power comes back on. Everyone's trying to figure out what's happening when they see a vehicle speeding down the road. It pulls into the diner and, wait a minute, are those normal people? They're trying to get gas, then suddenly some other vehicles show up. Kyle realizes that they turn the lights on to make a trap for the family. The first car runs the dad over that was pumping gas. For some reason, these possessed guys are listening to some metal music and look like a punk band that dabbles in meth cooking. They take the kid out of the van, so Kyle jumps down off the roof to try and save him. He manages to fight off the creatures and get to the child. But after picking him up, he hears a strange humming. When he looks down, the kid says, "Fooled you," in a deep voice and bites his neck. So I guess it was like a double cross. The people in the van were possessed the whole time and were just part of a bigger trap. By the way, rip Kyle. Audrey then jumps down to avenge his death, but runs out of ammo in 5 seconds. Yeah, that was a bad plan. She's forced to run and hide in the van that the family pulled up in. Before Kyle was killed, Bob tried to open the door to help, but Michael said if he opens the door, they all die. So he leaves it shut. But when Charlie sees Audrey jump down, she tells Michael, if you don't help her, I will. And obviously Michael can't let her do that, so he goes full Punisher mode to save Audrey. He makes short work of the creatures, and when he reaches the van, he makes a flamethrower out of the gas pump. I recommend you don't try that at home. The fire causes all the creatures to back away, and Michael quickly grabs Audrey. Then the gas pumps explode. Well, the good news is they saved Audrey. The bad news is that creepy little kid got into the diner. He starts going all Chucky, trying to stab Charlie, but she defends herself with a baking pan. Then he accidentally cuts his own thumbs off trying to stab her, giving Charlie the chance to kick him. But when she does, the power goes out. Possessed kids and darkness don't mix. Don't look up, don't do it. Oh, bloody handprints. They're following the trail when they suddenly stop. Then the child lunges from behind, grabbing onto Bob's neck. He gets the child off and Michael shoots him. But all this excitement has caused Charlie to go into labor. They're trying to help her the best they can when they hear deafening and thunderous horns blare from the sky. The sound is so loud it causes everything to vibrate and shake. The sound reminds me of the beginning of BioShock 3 and those conspiracies about sky trumpets. Michael must know exactly what this sound means because he gets anxious and tells Charlie she needs to hurry and push as hard as she can. Up on the roof, Bob and Jeep are looking out into the darkness when some lightning lights up the desert and we see thousands of possessed people standing, waiting. Back inside, Charlie successfully gives birth to the savior. Michael admits this doesn't mean they're safe though, but at least the child will have a chance to grow and lead the world out of darkness. Charlie isn't sure if she can raise the baby, or if she wants to. She suggests that Michael take the baby, but he says this journey is hers. She knows Michael is right and accepts her fate. Throughout the movie, we see that she does really care about the baby, but she projects this idea that she doesn't, because she's afraid. We especially see this when she tries to light a cigarette, kind of like to spite the baby, but then she can't help herself and puts the cigarette out immediately. When the newborn baby starts to cry, it rings through the desert, and the possessed cover their ears and wail in pain. The savior must be like a weakness to the possessed. We hear those loud sky trumpets again, and Michael fills us in that the possessed cannot come near the child now that it's born. So he sends someone who can. Someone like him. Gabriel. Michael says something very important here. He tells the group Gabriel is coming to do what he wouldn't. That's when Jeep puts the pieces together. Earlier, he told Jeep that he was given an order he couldn't obey, and Jeep realizes that order was to kill the child. This makes everyone a little wary and second-guess Michael's intentions for a second, even though that makes no sense because he risked his life several times to save them and cut off his own wings. Michael also says the future has been unwritten. The child lives. This confirms what I said earlier, that Michael did know the future, but by saving the child, it has altered that future. Now he doesn't know what will happen. Charlie turns around to grab her baby, but suddenly Sandra jumps up out of the chair and takes the baby. She is clearly completely out of her mind at this point. She says all they want is the baby, so I'll give them the baby and they'll let us go. What is she talking about? She knows they're trying to exterminate all of mankind, and I'm pretty sure that would include her. We see a first-person view of something flying down to the front door of the diner. From inside, we see a bright light approaching. Michael knows what's coming and has no choice, so he shoots Sandra. Jeep dives for the baby and catches him. A moment later, Gabriel appears in the doorway. He walks in and everyone is in awe of his majesty and large wings. He looks down at Jeep and without saying a word, swings his mace at the floor with superhuman strength. Bob tries to shoot Gabriel, but his wings sound like they're made of steel and protect him. He also uses one of his wings to slice Bob's stomach like a knife. Jeep wants to help his dad, but Michael says to get the child out of here, find the prophets, and learn to read the instructions. We have no idea what Michael is talking about, and neither does Jeep, but I'll explain this soon. He sneaks out the back with the baby, Charlie, and Audrey. And just like Michael said, the possessed cannot come near the child. It's like they have a force field around them. They slowly make their way to the car and start driving, presumably toward Red Ridge, which we heard about earlier on the radio. That also made me think when all those people were driving by and got possessed, I wonder if they were all trying to get to Red Ridge or one of those national parks. Back at the diner, Michael is trying to reason with Gabriel. They talk about how Michael is the rebellious one, compared to Gabriel, who is always too eager to please. Michael tries to offer him one last chance. He leans in close and says, "It's enough. There's another way." Gabriel appears emotional in this moment, considering Michael's words, and for a moment, it looks like he might change his mind. But then he finally says, "There is no other way," and pushes Michael back. The two begin to fight, Gabriel swinging his mace and Michael shooting with his guns. We can tell that Michael and Gabriel are both very well trained in combat. However, it's obvious that Gabriel has a clear strength advantage. It seems that when Michael removed his wings, he also gave up some of his supernatural strength. Gabriel almost shreds him when he puts his mace on spin cycle. Looks like Heaven has some pretty cool weapons. Overall, Michael's putting up a good fight and ends up on Gabriel's back, choking him, telling him that's enough. Gabriel then grabs his mace, puts it up to his own chest, and when he spins the handle, it causes a sharp spike to shoot through him, but also Michael. Michael drops to the floor, gasping, while Gabriel stands there like nothing happened. Again, when Michael removed his wings, he must have also lost his immortality or healing ability that clearly Gabriel has. Gabriel looks over his body and says, "You wanted to live like one of them. Now, you'll die like one of them." Michael's body begins to light up and fade away into an ethereal dust. As Jeep is driving down the road, suddenly Michael's tattoos begin to appear on his arms. The instructions. I guess that means Michael knew he was going to die at some point. Just before Gabriel leaves the diner, he hears a noise and walks behind the counter. Remember Bob said the gas is still on? Well, that's the end of Gabriel. We cut back to the group driving down the road and looking through the car for weapons. That's when Gabriel smashes down on the back of the vehicle, and there's not a scratch on him. This proves that clearly an angel with its wings is much more powerful, and basically invincible. Gabriel is half in the car fighting with everyone when Jeep slams on the brakes, causing Gabriel to fly through the window. But it also causes them to crash and flip the car. Unfortunately, Audrey doesn't survive the crash, so that can't be good for a baby that's 2 hours old. Charlie and Jeep are battered and bruised but alive, and they begin to walk up a cliff, but are met at the top by Gabriel. He gets into a fight with Jeep and he fights with everything he has. Gabriel is confused and asks him, "Why do you fight when there is no hope?" Reminds me of Agent Smith talking to Neo.
Why, Mr. Anderson? Why? Why do you persist?
Right when it looks like Jeep is about to be killed, Michael reappears, with his wings. Gabriel's in disbelief, saying, "This can't be. You disobeyed him." Michael does a callback to what he said to Gabriel in heaven before. "You gave him what he wanted. I gave him what he needed." Gabriel looks angry, like he's going to attack Michael. If it wasn't clear enough that Michael was at a huge disadvantage in their last fight, this proves it. Now that Michael has his wings back, he literally one-taps Gabriel. Michael is so powerful now that even Jeep looks afraid for a moment. Gabriel is known as God's messenger, but Michael is known as God's warrior. The warrior. He puts his sword up to Gabriel's neck and he tells Michael to do it. For a moment, we see the anger in Michael's face, and Gabriel again tells him to do it, but Michael restrains himself. Gabriel says, "I would not have shown you such mercy." Michael replies, "I know. That's why you failed him." Gabriel looks down in shame, then flies away, accepting his defeat. At this point, there's no way he can defeat Michael, so he has no choice but to give up. It seems like eventually God came around to what Michael said, resurrected him, and decided that he was right. Humanity does deserve another chance. Before leaving, Michael tells Jeep that he is the true protector. He always was. Then he flies up into the sky. When the sun comes up, Jeep and Charlie can see the big camp of survivors and start making their way there. Now I can explain these tattoos. We're never told exactly what they are, or what they're for in the movie, but the book does explain. The angel Uriel described them as divine creativity passed down from God. This would explain how Michael was able to change the future, as he said, and save the child. The tattoos are written in a language so old, it is only known to God. Somehow they did manage to translate these tattoos though, and the first translated piece of the instruction said, "Beware those closest to you." So it appears even once you translate them, you still have to figure out what the hell they mean. Figures. So Michael held the tattoos first. They were gifted to him in heaven for his service. Once coming to Earth, Michael then passed them to Jeep, which in the book pissed off Gabriel because I'm pretty sure he wanted them. Then finally, Jeep passes them on to Charlie's son, Alex. We don't learn the child's name in the movie, but in the book, he's named Alex. Michael and Jeep were basically just temporarily holding the tattoos since Alex is the true chosen one. I want to take a minute and talk about the angels and the technology they use. At the beginning of the movie, when Michael cuts off his wings, this necklace falls off as well. This is never touched on, but my guess is that the collar is tied to their angelic power in some way. It may also be a tracking device of some kind. It seems like Michael needed to remove his wings and this necklace in order to do what he needed to. His wings and immortality really would have helped him in the fight, so he must have had no choice but to remove them. He also told Gabriel, to not feel their burden is a dream. I'm not sure exactly what this means. If you have any ideas, let me know. The halo above his head disappeared when the necklace came off, so the two might be linked. When he was a full angel again, he had this necklace back on. Clearly the angels have some form of advanced tech though, because not only did they have this necklace, but Gabriel's mace is quite impressive. It is made out of an extremely strong material, can spin the end like it has a motor, and a retractable spike. Michael and Gabriel seem to be much different than the other angels. Michael said that the others couldn't come near the child, so he sent another like him, Gabriel. There is clearly a hierarchy among angels. It seems that some cannot come down to earth in physical form and are only capable of possession, whereas angels such as Gabriel and Michael can come down to earth in their physical form, wings and all. I wonder if this is because Michael and Gabriel are considered archangels, also known as chief angels. The way the angels could possess people and influence them reminded me of the movie Constantine. In that movie, people are often controlled by demons, but it's stated that angels have this power as well. They just choose not to use it as they don't like to affect the free will of mankind. This was probably the case in Legion as well, until God lost his faith. The other aspect of this movie that reminds me of Constantine is to save your child. It's like the complete opposite though. In Constantine, they're trying to bring about the birth of the Antichrist, where in Legion, they're bringing about the birth of the Savior. The angels looking scary in some cases reminded me of the series Midnight Mass. More accurately, the quote about someone in the Bible being afraid when they first see an angel. There are many examples like Zechariah being afraid when he met an angel, who was actually Gabriel, and all the instances of angels telling people not to be afraid. We don't really know what angels look like, so for all we know, some of them could be quite terrifying. Although, when we see all the angels flying in heaven, they appear identical to humans, just like Michael and Gabriel. That's my video on Legion. This movie really got dumped on by critics, but it's nowhere near as bad as what they say. I really enjoy it and always have. It has a similar feel to something like Van Helsing or League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, in that it's not the greatest story ever written. It's not in the same category as something like Goodfellas or The Prestige, but it's an entertaining movie. Good characters, exciting moments, and very rewatchable. Every character puts in a good performance. My favorites are probably Paul Bettany, Tyrese Gibson, Dennis Quaid, and Charles Dutton. Some people complain that they stay in the diner the whole time, but I like the simplicity of the story. One location, save the baby. One thought I had while watching this movie is instead of the diner being called Paradise Falls, it should have been Paradise Lost, like the poem written about Adam and Eve being thrown out of Eden, aka Paradise. It would have matched up nicely with Bob talking about being lost, Michael saying being lost is so close to being found, and also the guy on the radio talking about people being lost. I guess Paradise Falls could represent mankind falling out of God's grace, but Paradise Lost would have been so perfect. If you enjoy this movie like I do, I would definitely recommend the book, and there's also a television series with 2 seasons called Dominion, inspired by the film. If there's any other movies or TV shows you want me to cover, leave them in the comments below. I always read through them. If you enjoyed, leave a like, and subscribe if you haven't. It helps out a lot, and I really appreciate it. As always, an extra big thanks to all my members for supporting the channel. It means a lot. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.